Let's talk about the pancreas. It's such an incredibly important organ because it controls glucose in your blood, and we have to maintain proper glucose levels. We're going to talk about these negative feedback systems of glucose and insulin and glucagon on the next slide, but I want you to be able to explain these negative feedback systems and be comfortable with the negative feedback systems. So here is an islet of Langerhans. And the islets of Langerhans contain two different types of cells. We have alpha cells and we have beta cells. And the alpha cells produce glucagon and the beta cells produce insulin, so know that. And they stain differently in here, but you wouldn't have to be able to identify alpha from beta cells. Then here we have the endocrine portion of the pancreas, and out here we have the exocrine portion of pancreas. The acinar cells of the pancreas are cells that secrete digestive enzymes, and most of the pancreas is made of acinar cells, or is exocrine tissue. So here's an islet of Langerhans. We have millions of islets of Langerhans in your pancreas. So which cells make insulin? That would be your beta cells. And which cells make glucagon? Those would be your alpha cells. And what are your islets of Langerhans? Those would be the endocrine portions, that would be the endocrine portion of your pancreas. Those would be little islands within the pancreas that actually produce the hormones of the pancreas, glucagon and insulin. So we'll talk about insulin first, and insulin is your hypoglycemic hormone, so its effect is to lower blood glucose. That's what a hypoglycemic hormone does. And it does this by telling the cells of your body to take glucose up. Take the glucose out of the blood and put it inside the cells. And it also has two other effects. It prevents glycogenolysis, so it prevents the liver from breaking down glycogen, and it prevents other cells like the liver from making new glucose from non-carbohydrate products. That's what gluconeogenesis is. Insulin also promotes protein synthesis, so it has an anabolic effect, and it also promotes fat storage. So what insulin does is it encourages us to take up our glucose first, but if we have a lot of glucose, then the next thing that we do after we take up the glucose that we need is it encourages the production of glycogen by our liver and also our skeletal muscles. And then if we still have glucose left over, it encourages the production of fat. So this is the order that it does this. So this is this negative feedback system that I was talking about earlier. Our normal blood glucose levels, say at fasting, is about 90 milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood. Now, if our blood glucose levels go up because we eat, what's going to happen is our pancreas detects that rise in blood glucose levels. And it's going to release insulin. But there are some other triggers for insulin release. For instance, if we have rising levels of amino acids or fatty acids in the blood, or if we have parasympathetic fibers innervating the pancreas that causes the release of insulin. These are some other triggers. But if blood glucose levels go up, our pancreas is going to detect this and it's going to release insulin. And insulin is going to travel through the blood and it's going to tell our cells in our body to take up that excess glucose. And that is going to lower blood glucose levels back down to the normal range. In addition to this, insulin is also going to target our liver to take that extra glucose inside of the liver cells and link those glucose molecules together by covalent bonding to produce this molecule right here, glycogen. So that is also going to lower blood glucose levels back to the normal range. So this is a negative feedback system right here. Now, on the other hand, if our blood glucose levels fall because, say, we skip a meal, then the pancreas is going to detect that and release a totally different hormone, glucagon. And glucagon will go through the blood, and what it will do is it will tell the liver to take the glycogen that is stored, this stored glucose, and it will tell the glycogen to break those covalent bonds between that it has within it and release individual glucose molecules. This is called glycogenolysis. And when it breaks down those individual covalent bonds, those glucose molecules will be released into the blood until the blood sugar levels will go back up to normal range. So these were the negative feedback systems that I wanted you to know on that first slide. So the pancreas is all about maintaining blood sugar levels. Now our main homeostatic imbalance with diabetes is diabetes mellitus. Now there's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 will be, and you can ignore this link by the way, this link, if you want to copy it down and look at it, it will really just show you how much we're not telling you about diabetes mellitus. But type 1 was also used to be known as juvenile diabetes, but it's also called insulin dependent diabetes because people with type 1 diabetes, they don't produce insulin basically, and so they must replace their insulin. And type 2 diabetes is also called adult onset, or used to be called adult onset diabetes, but nowadays even children are getting type 2 diabetes, so it's not really called adult onset anymore, and it's called insulin independent diabetes because most people, well, I don't want to say most people with type 2 diabetes, but many people with type 2 diabetes don't have to take insulin because they can control this type of diabetes with diet and exercise if they're lucky. With type 2 diabetes, a lot of times you do produce the insulin, but you are resistant to the own insulin that you produce. So here we're not producing insulin. Here we are producing insulin, but we're resistant against it. So what happens in diabetes, these are our tissues that are involved. We have the liver, we have fat, and we have skeletal muscle. And here in this column, we're saying the responses to insulin deficiency, or you can say, in this case, not being able to respond to the own insulin that we're making. So if we follow this chart along, if our liver and our fat cells and our skeletal muscle can't take glucose in and use it because either we are not making glucose or we are not reacting to our own glucose, what that's going to result in is elevated blood sugar levels. In other words, hyperglycemia. And if we have and likewise, that elevated blood sugar levels, what that will lead to if we have elevated blood sugar levels is it can lead to a response from our sympathetic nervous system. When we have elevated blood sugar levels for a long time, we can get very nauseous, and when we get nauseous, that leads our sympathetic nervous system to release epinephrine. And when we have an epinephrine response, epinephrine causes our liver to break down more sugar, and that leads to glycogenolysis. When we release more sugar into the blood, that leads to even higher blood sugar levels. So we end up with hyperglycemia, and that would be due to this glycogenolysis here. Also, another reason your liver would break down more glycogen to release glucose in it is because our cells aren't taking up any glucose and we're losing weight. We're losing weight because we can't get any glucose in, and we're starting to break down our muscles, as you see here in this row right here. Because we can't take any glucose in, we start breaking down our proteins, and when we break down our proteins to try to get some energy, we also start breaking down our fats. That's lipolysis down here. We start breaking down our proteins and our fats. Our bodies are trying to get energy because we can't take in our excess glucose, and we start losing weight. We start getting thinner. That's one symptom that we might have diabetes, weight loss. And while we're losing this, while our proteins we're losing weight, etc., we're breaking down these proteins, and we're trying to make even more sugar because our body doesn't think we have any sugar, our blood sugar levels are even going even higher, hyperglycemia. And all the while, our blood sugars are getting so high that our sugar is starting to spill over in our urine because our kidneys are getting overwhelmed with the amount of sugar that we have in the urine. Normally, your kidneys can take all the glucose in the urine and put it back into the blood. But there's going to be a point that the transporters in your kidneys are going to be just simply overwhelmed, and that the sugar, the glucose that's in the urine, is going to spill into the urine. I mean, literally can't be reabsorbed back into the blood. And so we end up with this glycosuria. And when we have glucose in the urine, it holds on to water in the urine, and we can't resorb that back into the blood. And so what happens is that glucose that's in the urine acts as an osmotic diuretic. It pulls water from our blood into the urine, so it acts as a diuretic, and we start losing blood volume to our urine. So we start urinating a lot. That's what this is, polyuria. We start, if you have diabetes, because of the sugar in your urine, you start going to the bathroom a whole lot, and that makes you dehydrated. And because you're dehydrated, then you get really thirsty. You're losing your blood volume through your urine, so you get really thirsty, and that's polydipsia. You start drinking a whole lot. You're eating a whole lot because you're losing weight. You're breaking down your fats and your proteins, and your blood sugar's going up, and you're drinking and you're eating. It's just going all wrong for you, isn't it? At the same time, when you're breaking down your fats, a byproduct of breaking down your fats is something called your ketones. Ketones are just like I said, a byproduct of breaking down fats, and ketones are acidic. And so you get fats that are entering into your blood, that's lipidemia, and the ketones that enter into your blood make your blood more acidic. So you have this ketoacidosis. This ketoacidosis makes your breath smell very fruity. You get a fruity breath. That's called acetone breath. And these ketones start spilling over into your urine. By the way, your pH of your blood starts going down. That's ketoacidosis. That's not good at all. You don't want your pH to fall below 7.35. And the ketones start spilling over into the urine. That's ketonuria, just like the glucose started falling into your urine. The ketones, when they go into your urine, they're negatively charged ions. They start pulling other electrolytes into your urine. And when you start pulling these electrolytes into your urine, you're going to lose lots of valuable electrolytes, and you throw off major systems in your body and start having cardiac irregularities, central nervous system depression, coma, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. You start having all these major symptoms, and it's horrible. Now, the hyperpnea means this is when you're starting to breathe at a very fast rate. The reason you're trying to breathe at a really irregular rate or a fast rate is because you're trying to blow off carbon dioxide to balance out. You're trying to blow off the carbon dioxide to get rid of your excess acid in your blood. So diabetes is a very dangerous disease. It's not something that you want to fool around with. And a lot of people don't manage their diabetes because they don't feel any different when they know that they're diabetic or pre-diabetic. But it's extremely, extremely dangerous, and it can lead to death. These are some end-stage signs of diabetes, but what high blood sugar levels do is really they mess up every single blood vessel in your body, and the blood vessels in your body are extremely important. So diabetes leads to strokes, heart attacks, kidney damage because of all the fine blood vessels in the kidneys, damage to your eyes because of the blood vessels in your eyes. It leads to having to have amputations because of the blood vessels in the fingers and toes and etc. And so taking care of yourself and making sure you don't have high blood sugar levels is extremely important. So please know all about diabetes, type 1 and type type 2. There's another type of diabetes called gestational diabetes, which is diabetes that you develop when you're pregnant, and that predisposes you, if you have gestational diabetes, to type 2 diabetes later on in life. Another type of diabetes is diabetes insipidus. Don't get that mixed up with diabetes mellitus, and that was associated with ADH, so look that up again. Okay, we'll talk about our gonads later.